Okay.
I like it. Alrighty. Welcome to Friendly Argument with
hello.
J.Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones. We were friends before this.
Friends during this.
We'll probably be friends after.
Cheers.
Okay, so.
October 5th, 2020.
Trump has COVID.
Trump has COVID.
Who saw the
Show of hands, who's surprised?
Yeah. The scriptwriters of 2020 are just really.
They're hitting all the bases.
It's like
they're
let's get
leaving
all of the plot. It's like, we could have, if this was the West Wing, it's like, we're burning through, seasons 7, 8, and, or 5 through 8 already.
This is the final season.
Yeah.
So, Trump has COVID, and my reaction to that was a bit of, you reap what you sow, I suppose.
I was when I heard it, was I basically was like, yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah,
it was unsurprising.
And one of the things that I heard or read during since he just got out of Walter Reed Hospital today, and genuinely I do genuinely wish him well and a speedy recovery for all folks involved. But the one of the things I read was that about the election that's coming up in less than a month now, that now that all the focus is on Trump having COVID, that the angle of this article was this election has always been about COVID, and I know that, and I had a reaction to that.
Okay,
and I'm interested in your reaction to that.
I guess I think when you first posed the topic, I was kind of yeah, maybe, but as I've thought about it more in the last few minutes, I think that is the election being about COVID is probably the best way to meta describe what the election is about. Because COVID, the reactions to COVID, it includes how much does the government get to shut things down?
Right.
How much what does this do to the economy? How does the government how does governing work? How much control and authority should government have over the population in times of emergency? And when does that power stop?
Yeah. I took it as kind of lazy journalism.
Well, that goes without saying these days, but
I don't 1,000,000% agree with that. I think that there is good journalism out there, and it is fewer and farther between, but it's out there, and this was something I read in the New York Times, which is a spot that I usually like. I think they have a very high grade journalism. No one's perfect, but a pretty high grade. And this from my perspective, and I think from my side, this is so about so much more than that. And the Supreme Court nominee, that is huge. The huge. I just said huge. I just said it. I didn't even mean to. Rubbing off on me. But there's so much that it's about. So, women and race and just the general feeling of discord between the populace and how stratified we are and how apart we are. That and it seems like we're doing a wedge issues, right? Like they said, Trump is a human wedge issue. He's been described as, and I just think there's so much more to that, and to say that it's about COVID. It's always been about COVID. That didn't sit well.
It doesn't sit well with you.
Didn't sit well with me.
So does it not? To get into the active listening part of our conversation. So what I'm hearing you saying is it's, if I can boil it down, saying that this election is about COVID is too cliche is not the right word, but maybe tripe or trivializing of everything that's going on. It's too surface level. It's too clean cut of a description of what's going on. It's
probably one of the more recent issues, but it's not it's been around for 9 months in the United States, right? And there was a whole presidency before that. You know what I mean? A whole term of so it's a very contemporary American
Mm-hmm.
take on it, which is, I don't know if maybe that is trite. Maybe that is how we do it now.
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel like our news cycle, our news zeitgeist at this point has the memory of a guppy.
Goldfish, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like, the last time this year, I think we were in the middle or last bits of impeachment.
Yeah.
I think this was like right before the Democrat, and before that was the Kavanaugh hearings.
There's just so much.
And then,
like, maybe we are in season 7.
I think
the writers are.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, instead of the West Wing being a full year of a presidency, the writers are like, hey, we're gonna do every quarter. We want to stretch this out into either 12 seasons or 24.
Yeah,
like let's just.
And we want 20 episodes a season.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah. Oh wait, did I do my math right there? 4 times 4, 16 seasons. So,
election being about COVID,
mm-hmm.
I thought, I don't know what the right word is. I think it's such a broad overgeneralization that it really it doesn't do it justice.
I think that
my view.
Yeah. So the Shapiroism is that every election is really a referendum on one candidate or the other, and so it's one way you can look at it is it a referendum on Trump or is it a referendum on Biden? So last election.
I see. I see.
So last election, presidential election, it was a referendum on Hillary Clinton, and that's why Trump won, because enough people just loathed Hillary Clinton that it went her way.
They bought that. Yeah.
And then the next election cycle, the one that's halfway in between whose name I'm forgetting. The midterm election was a referendum on Trump because the Republican.
Which the midterm typically.
It almost always is.
Almost always is.
And so this election is going to be, I don't know if it's even a referendum on Biden per se, so much as the Democratic Party, or it'll be a referendum on Trump.
If Ben Shapiro was a Democratic strategist and was actually making calls.
He does make strategy things for the Democratic Party sometimes, and because they're never going to listen to me, so that's okay.
But they would be listening to this.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they're just basically counting on Trump making himself so unappealing.
Yeah.
And just
I think
we got a candidate, his name's Biden. Cool. And just and like they put
I think that there is
his fundraising goes up crazy like when they had that debate.
Yeah.
So they're just like let him.
Yeah, I think that there is. I would honestly say that probably might be a part of the Democratic strategy, because Biden Biden's been hiding in his basement for most of the campaign, and he calls a lid like at 3:00 most days, if not like at 8:00 in the morning. So I think that there
calls a lid.
A lid. I learned this phrase recently. So in a campaign setting, if the candidate's like, "Hey, I'm done for the day. I'm not going to deal with media anymore," it's called calling a lid. So they put a lid on it. Know that. Yeah, and so
fun. There you go. There's your
random fact.
Poli-sci trivia.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I only learned about it this election cycle because Biden keeps calling lids like really, really early in like the afternoon or just for the day.
Yeah.
So like I believe the statistic is he's called more lids than any other like campaign in history.
Oh, interesting.
Which,
I mean,
take that I think there's a double-edged sword strategy there. I think that there's partially what you were talking about,
yeah.
And I think there's also a partial like you just want to keep Biden out of the camera because even when he was like completely there, he was a gaffe machine. I think he is becoming more and more of a gaffe machine as things go.
Yeah, on that, I mean, he came out ahead on the debate.
I think so, probably.
And so
I don't think he came out ahead by a lot because it was like everybody was being exactly who they were.
Yeah.
Except for Chris Wallace, who I had higher expectations of. But
interesting. Yeah, I mean, Chris Wallace just looked out of his depth, but I don't know who could have handled that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't put.
I think Joe Rogan would have done a good job with it. Well, no, because Joe Rogan would have beat up on. Do you think Joe Rogan would beat up on Joe Biden? He'd have fun with Trump.
Yeah, I don't need a host. I need a moderator.
Yeah, but I still think
that's a different set of skills.
Oh, I guess I've never seen him moderate between two people who disagree. Well, a little bit when if
he was commentating,
yeah,
and they were fighting,
yeah,
I would love it.
Well, so
him and Daniel Cormier.
So this is my only.
You guys are awesome.
My only reason I think he might be a good moderator, and I don't know if this is the best example, but he did a podcast with Tim Pool, who's a journalist that I tend to follow. I think you might like him. He's a little more left-leaning. And Jack Dorsey, and Jack Dorsey's like head of diversity, or like their this is whether you get to be on Twitter or not person. And so Tim kept making a bunch of points, and I think for the most part during the conversation, Rogan stayed out of it until it was like, hey, you're not answering this question. And so he'd like hit him back on it and say, hey, you have to answer this. Or just admit that you're not going to answer it. So I think he has the capability of doing it. I don't know if it's necessarily his normal wheelhouse.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind it. I just haven't I haven't seen it. Yeah. I haven't seen that set of skills from him, but I'm not 1,000,000% against it. But I didn't fault Chris Wallace for being totally caught off guard. Like that was, I mean, we should all be embarrassed. I think as a
country, yes, we should be embarrassed by that whole thing.
One of my favorite memes about the debate was the world is watching the United States the way the United States watched the Tiger King.
Yeah. And yeah, so I don't think, like, I think any civilization that is usually, like, the top dog will inevitably start having internal strife because people want the power. However, I don't think that we necessarily have to have that. Particularly because we're a country who's founded on ideology rather than, or we're founded on creed rather than, like, race or people group.
Yeah, I like that. I don't think we necessarily have to. At absolute worst case scenario, I would like not to give it away the fastest.
Yes.
Which is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that...
I think there's been some empires that fell, like, in a... Well, I mean, Alexander the Great was a one-generation empire.
A tour. Yeah, he just...
And then it became 4 empires that roughly stood, like, a couple hundred years each. But yes, no, I don't see any reason why the American experiment needs to fail after 200 years after being the most successful. Like, I think we're in the part of the American experiment where we have to figure out, okay, well, how do we maintain success?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
How do we go on? Like, we are no longer...
We've been handed this baton. How do we hold on to it?
We're the generation who has to figure out, okay, we don't have an enemy. Like, you and I are probably the last generation or the first generation to not have a rival.
Yeah.
In it. We've always been in America. Berlin Wall fell in 1990. I was barely cognizant of, I think I liked Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers. Like, that was my world.
Yeah.
And so it's like, 9/11 was a little bit of a blip of like, oh, there's dangers out there, but at the end of the day it was like the second Gulf War was over in 3 days, 2 weeks.
Yeah, very
something ridiculous. And so we're the first generation that we have to figure out, okay, what does it mean to be successful, and how do we export all the good that we are as a country to the rest of the world without falling apart. And how do we get a rival that's worthy of us morally?
Well, I think that there's opportunities for that. And I mean, we've gone to war for not much. You know what I mean? I think we can get people behind just the idea of like, let's who went the furthest before us? Athens? Like let's try to take it that far. Like
democracy?
Yeah, like let's whoever that is, let's try and they were 450 years. Okay, there's our goal. We want to go 5. Yeah.
Let's at least tie the Roman Republic.
There you go. I mean, like these are the things that I think we should get behind.
Yes.
Instead of just
but I think part of that, and we've done the tangent. Thank you, Sven. One thing I kind of enjoy about our show is like we try, like, the original premise of the show was here's here's how I'm thinking, here's how you're thinking. Let's have the active listening conversation. But I find so much of the time we're like, well, we kind of agree on like the baseline of that. Then let's figure like, and we move off into more of the meta questions,
which I think
I feel is more interesting. But
I think it's, I would say it's more interesting, but I'd say it's more valuable because I think it's those like why do we really disagree? Not where the disagreement is, but why
are we disagreeing?
And that is the elephant.
Yeah.
That we're defining more and more each and every time.
So stepping back into our conversation,
yes.
I think what we're kind of dancing around here is, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, is we're trying to find what is America's close-handed issues. Like, what are the things that, like, this is what makes us American, where you better be on board with all of these things.
Right.
And then, like, the open-handed issues where it's like, I don't particularly care for that, but I'm not going to call you not an American if you disagree.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I feel like that is, particularly for our generation, because we don't have, it's a nebulous thing now. Like, it's not a us versus them. It has to be a us and everybody else can come along. Now it's our thing. So
I think you're, to me, that is, you're defining maturity.
Yeah.
Like, I think us versus them is a very schoolyard.
It's very adolescent.
It's figuring out who you are. It's very child.
These are my friends because they're my friends, and screw the rest of the world.
Yeah. And so we need to graduate, mature into leadership.
Yeah.
And the leadership that we have, and that we sort of did pretty good with there for, I think, like moments.
I think when we were the crusaders for truth and justice in the American way, I think we were a little bit better about it. There were definitely failings within that.
For sure.
But I think we at least had a better idea of what it was, instead of now this, like, the good has, we'll go with like a Christian example, right? So there's,
it wouldn't be an
Andrew story. Yes, it wouldn't be an Andrewism if it weren't something like that. So one of the things that Christianity talks about is like we'll call it God's way, but like the Christianese is the narrow way.
Okay.
Right? And so it's like the right path where you're still within, like, as long as you're on this path, you're within righteousness. Right? You are in line with God's desires. And like there's some wiggle room on the path. Right? So it's like you don't have to be like on the direct center, but you can, as long as you're on the path, you're there. The problem is you can go to the left or the right, which means that at any given issue, you can fail by doing either too little or too much of the thing.
Sure.
Right? So like with, all right, well, I'll just go with the first example that pops into my mind. So like with sexuality, right? You can either be too loose and just like there's just anything and everything licentiousness, right? Which is not a healthy lifestyle, right? Or you can go into too much into prudishness, where it's like, no, sex is bad and you shouldn't ever have it outside of procreation, right?
Okay.
Like that is, both of those are bad ends of the spectrum. Whereas like a healthy thing is like, well, this is where you're like having, like, your sexuality is focused in on, like, I guess if we're not making it the Christian version, then like a few people, right?
Yeah.
Or you're monogamous, if not necessarily, what's the word I'm looking for?
I think I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
I understand what you're saying.
I wish I would have like a slightly broader example.
Yeah, that you chose a thorny example.
Let's do money.
Okay.
Maybe this will be a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So like with money, you can either be completely spending for other people, right? In a unhealthy, like you're just letting money, or not for other people. You're either just letting money flow out. Like you can't save money to save your life.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then on the other end of that, you have the people who are like, I've never spent anything. Like I haven't even invested. It's all under my doormat. I refuse because I want that. I want that security. And like neither of those ways, they're both unhealthy views of money.
Right.
And the healthy way is somewhere in between.
Yeah.
So that's a better example.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, like I was trying to think of like don't do sex. I was like, don't do sex. I was like, come on, Andrew, find something different.
But But yeah,
what was the step back from that one?
So we were talking about the format. We were talking about getting back to the election.
Okay, so what I was saying, the point I was making was, with America, we've gone when we were fighting communism, ideologically speaking, we had like there was we can't go into just falling for this, or we're not going to go do communism because it leads to bad things. But then on the other side of that, we had the corporatist stuff where, like, the 80s greed is good, anything to increase your material wealth, right? And like neither of that was the answer. So now that we're out of this, we just kind of, instead of having like a straight narrow road, we've just kind of like we've muffin topped, and now there's no way to go except for out, and that's not great for us.
Well, yeah, and everybody's kind of going in different directions, and yeah,
there's no guardrail to
I follow what you're saying as far as sort of
my roundabout Andrew Reed's version of
but you were sort of, that path was sort of like the close-handed things.
Yes.
Like they were pretty clearly defined. Most people could probably put those together. Yeah. You could probably even put together some of the open-handed things. I like that.
You can connect them, the open-handed to the close-handed stuff.
Right. And what I would say, to bring it back to what the election not being about COVID, that is a much now you've chosen on that spectrum of one side to the other side, and the path in the center. Yeah. You just put your stake in this one thing. Yeah. And you almost by definition have to be wrong. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because now, is it a big thing? Is it a large contributing factor? Absolutely, without question. COVID is a large contributing factor to this election, but it particularly this election. Yeah. There's just been so much, around it, women's rights and race and just
policing, like the conversation around policing,
Supreme Courts and electoral colleges, and just, I mean, it's just been boomity boom that I really feel like they did a disservice by saying, of course, when the president of a certain age goes ill, we're all going to focus on that. Yeah. He could have come down with anything. Yeah. It wasn't about COVID. No. With the last 5 minutes, have you heard the last 5 minutes of this section? Yeah. It's a hoax, that he doesn't actually, like, people are saying like that Trump planned.
Oh, so he shut up for a while? I'm sure his campaign was happy about that.
But like they were saying like the October surprise. This is his October surprise. And I personally don't think that's true. I think it's a fun story. Yeah. But
where are they saying the win is? Like where's the self-interest?
Like they can't attack you as much. Everybody has to say, hey,
we're
thoughts and prayers. Yeah, and getting all that sort of stuff, and then you get all the things that kind of come along with that. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because you do have to tread more lightly. And do I think that's actually the case? Absolutely not. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems. I don't see the net benefit. Like, I mean, if he pulled this, like, if this was like a late 20s, early 30s date in October, pulling that like right before the election.
Oh, like right.
Then yeah, I could see that. But like this, or like shooting that in early October, I don't see that. Like
you know what? It would have held more water for me. Mm-hmm. Like if during the debate he was like, we got to be careful about this. You know what I mean? Like really, like you got to be careful about how you treat these, these people that come down with it. Like if he gave any sort of point in that direction, zero. I mean, he was like, this guy's wearing a mask. What an ass. Like, you know what I mean? Like the whole time. And it's like, well, and then it's like,
So, thought to end it. Yeah. I haven't watched all of it. I just started it. But the SNL debate. I haven't watched all of it, but they have Jim Carrey being Biden, and I have to admit, like, the first thing he does is he comes out and he measures the distance between the two podium and then scoots it a little farther away. It tickled me.
Yeah,
Tickled me great.
and that's a fun one. Thanks SNL.
Yep.
For all the yucks. With that, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Excellent.
I can't even. Don't get me started with that.
We will talk about that after.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friendly Argument for October 5th, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Trump,
Part 2.
Trump has COVID episode. Mm-hmm. So we were discussing earlier one of the things that we read recently was that this presidential election is 100% about COVID, and we discussed that. So now we're going to kind of dive in and go back to our little bit of a format for what do we think as avatars for our respective sides. What do we think the election is about?
Mm-hmm. So I think just to clarify, so it's not it's what we think the election about is for our sides. It's not necessarily what every Joe Schmo who's like maybe in the middle would think the election's about.
Yeah, I mean that is the Joe Schmo in the middle. That's tough to that's tough to define.
But it's like the thing that like
I could tell you what what it is for me. I think you could say what it is for you, and I think we could do Avatar.
Yeah,
but
I think
I don't.
Yeah, let's start with avatarism.
Yeah,
because I think, but it was more of like I just wanted to clarify that we're not actually trying to think about what the election actually is so much as like what we think it is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, fun topic of discussion. What is it about? But I mean, that's indefinable. I mean, that's.
Do you want to go or first? Do you want me to?
Please.
Okay. So I believe in my form as the avatar of the right wing / conservative zeitgeist. I think this election is about. It's about continuing the fight against the cultural and political movements, power grabs from long-term government actors, and basically tried to roll back the creep that has been coming through for the last 60 years. And
what, like, can you cite a couple power grabs, like
So the use of the Supreme Court as a legislative branch. So I'm trying to think of.
You don't want to use the Supreme Court as
They shouldn't be legislating things. Like they shouldn't be changing laws.
Okay.
Yeah. Like they're arbitrators, but they shouldn't. So like they can say, okay, so we think this lines up or doesn't line up with the Constitution, but they shouldn't have the power to actually effectuate any of that. And more, the judicial branch has been used as a tool to effectuate policy.
So, to keep the judicial branch, like, is it about keeping the judicial branch from affecting policy, or is it about reversing those power grabs? So, if the Supreme Court was used as a legislative branch to change those power grabs, you would be okay with that?
If they were walking back their power, yes.
Because I'm thinking so it seems like we're stacking up things against Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court currently. Which I'm guessing you would see as a power grab.
Yeah, because it was I believe it is very universally considered to be a poor ruling. Like even if you agree with the ruling, like the reasoning behind it is very thin.
Okay.
Because it's penumbras and there's like 3 phrases and I'm forgetting them right now where it's like this isn't in the Constitution, like anywhere in it, but you're justifying the decision that you wanted to make.
Right. So that's fine. So you want the judiciary to not be used as a legislative branch unless it is to
take away the power
to take undo the things that were done.
Yes, that I'm okay with. In the same way
that's a slippery.
Well, so yeah, I mean everything is a slippery slope to a certain extent or another. But I would also say that the executive branch should be doing the same thing. like more and more power should be divested. Like a lot of power should be divested from the judiciary and the executive branch, and more should be into the legislative branch.
What do those two currently hold that should be more?
So most actual, I'm going to air quotes here. Law comes either down through the courts, talking about the law and saying, well, was not written clearly, so this is how we're going to define it, and then precedence then builds up for that, which is not the function of the judiciary. What a law means is the function of the executive or the legislative. Then the other portion of what gets practically made into what is practical in law comes from the executive saying, okay, well, here's the law. This is how we're going to choose to either enforce it or codify the places where it's unclear.
So both the judiciary and the executive fill in the blanks on the law, but they don't make the law.
Correct. And so the filling into the blanks should be the legislature's job, but that's not where it is supposed to be their job, but means that they have to take a lot of responsibility for that, and that's not necessarily as good for getting elected. So what the legislature tends to do is write kind of vague-ish, like broad. Here's the general direction we want you to go with this,
right? And
then they pass it off to the executive, or it gets fought out in the courts, and then it's like, well, that doesn't, that means that the people's representatives are no longer in charge of what actually happens. It is bureaucrats on the other two who end up making all the decisions. And so then you get a more and more solidified, like, I'll call it a class, but that may not necessarily be the best term. Okay. But you get a more and more solidified bureaucratic class of experts who then start controlling things. And I don't think that that's what America is about.
So this election is about continuing that,
to roll back that,
to walk that back.
Yeah.
Do you think that does that you're unwilling to have the judiciary do it, be a legislative body, unless it's in line with that thinking,
with rolling it back? Yeah.
Does that bother you that there's almost like no hammers unless it's the hammer I like, like. I
mean, I can
I'm
see.
I'm over.
Yeah. No. And I mean, like, I can see where your fear of that is and legitimate.
Yeah.
But I guess the reason I don't particularly, aside from the fact like there's things that I would like the results of that I would like, the reason I think I don't have a problem with it in the same way you do is that I don't see it. I see it as there's a clear stopping point. Well, no, there's not a clear stopping point. There's a slightly muddy water stopping point where it's like, okay, well, now there's too much power. Like, the power has shifted too far and it needs to swing back, but we're not at that point yet.
How is that defined? Like, how do you as the avatar, or you as Andrew, and we're this is not a meeting. We're just talking. Like,
so I guess how is it defined?
Because you see them as these power grabs, whereas I think my side would define them as like liberty for the people,
but it was liberty that came through. It didn't come through a legitimate source. Like, if you wanted to keep Roe versus Wade, let's just say Roe versus Wade is overturned today, right? What effectively happens is it's then dropped back down into the states. So nothing changes in California. It gets closed in Alabama and Kansas. But then if the rest of the states were like, hey, this is a thing that should be a federal thing, then they could, if there were enough of them, they could put it through the legislature. Like, if it's that important of a thing, then the argument should be made so that it's strong enough that the legislature can legislate on it.
So even if something that you agreed with came through by illegitimate means, as you put it, would you still want it out?
Yeah, if it was an overreach because I'm more concerned about our systems working than I am
in
about...
God we trust off everything. No public
if that's
of
what
that at
I don't
all.
agree with that on a cultural or moral level. I think it would hurt us it would hurt us as a country. But if that was what if it passed the Senate and the House, then that's the system we set up. Like, I won't like it, but I'd live with it.
Okay.
This might be an issue that comes up later.
Yeah.
As long as it was a duly elected and fair process.
So, because it's part of the process. The judiciary is part of the process, and there is going to be some situations where new things pop up. You know what I mean? That'll happen. And there are some things where words are defined with other words, and ambiguity is inherent. So they're going to be part of that process.
Yeah.
So you could say that Roe v. Wade was brought legitimately.
I mean, it was brought before the courts legitimately.
Yeah.
It was ruled poorly. Like, even if you agree or disagree with it, even if you agree with the ruling, it was not, like, the results, it was not ruled well. Like, it was not logically or legally justified.
So Citizens United, I would say, totally not ruled well. Definitely widely considered
a poor ruling. Then I would be okay with Citizens United. I mean, I'm not as familiar with that case.
Yeah.
In particular, I mean, to be fair, I'm only generally familiar with Roe versus Wade.
And the show isn't about those.
But yes,
details.
If that was the case for Citizens United, then yeah, I would be okay rolling that back. Like, at the end of the day, I want our system to work. And I think that too much authority and power has been taken over by one type of thinking to the detriment of other types of thinking. And I think that is what this election is about. Like, the reason we have Trump, at least for the conservatives, is it's a armor-piercing bullet. No one likes it, really, at the end of the day, except for some assholes who think he's funny. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this is the round we had to put in the chamber.
Is it ever okay to use armor-piercing bullets against your team?
Well, so this is part of the problem that we're having culturally, is it doesn't always feel like it's our team, right? So this is the problem.
These are the moments. These are the moments why I do this show.
Yeah.
This is so nice.
Yeah, and see, this is the way I would most conservatives, I think, feel is like we were just going along and we're like, hey, these were like our close-handed American issues.
Yeah.
And then as we've been going along, it's like, oh nope, America's evil, or like, what we're doing is bad, or oh hey, you're a Christian, yeah, no, fuck you. Like, you can't have that as part of the public sphere. Never mind that, like, you can be anything else, and have that as part of the public sphere, but you can't have this.
They have. There's in God we trust on the dollar in my pocket, but there's not any Islamic on any dollar that I've ever had. Like, it's not on the same level.
So, well, hold on. First of all, in God we trust is not necessarily the Judeo-Christian God, because the people who put on there were also very highly deist. Second of all,
people put on it. Mm-hmm. People, the presidents and stuff.
Yes, like what God was defined as when they put that on was not necessarily just the Christian God. There was also like a lot, particularly Thomas Jefferson was very much into like there is something out there. There's something out there that is God, that is above and separate from nature. But,
right, a church-going man, Thomas Jefferson, and
yeah, I mean everyone was a church-going man at that point.
So
but
that's what I'm saying. So you have this group of church-going Christian dudes all going to Christian churches, and they put in God we trust on the money. It seems like it's a Christian God, and it seems like we like to define ourselves it's this dichotomy that doesn't always sit awesome, that we're this Christian, we in some ways define ourselves as a Christian nation, and in some ways it's like there's supposed to be the separation of church and state. There's been a chewing at that for a while.
So yes, you are right in that, because we are a Western civilization. We are a Western country, and part of being a Western country is that we are going to be a Judeo-Christian country. Like that
Western equals Judeo-Christian.
Yes, because I think we've talked about this before. There's like 5 pillars of what makes up Western culture. There's Roman republicanism, to a certain extent, or like Roman stuff. Greek philosophy. It's like it's Roman. It's effectively Roman government. Greek philosophy, German, like individualism. Like Germanic tribal individualism.
Oh, okay. So you're talking like conceptually.
Yeah, like these are the things that made up
Western
that make up Western civilization.
Okay.
It is the Judeo system, Jewish system of moral laws, or actually it might even be legal system. You'd have to actually ask somebody who's more familiar with common law.
Yeah, common law is definitely English.
It's English, but it can't, like the common law.
Oh, you're saying it came from the.
I believe it was based off of Jewish Old Testament law, and then Christian values, and that's what makes up. Like, even if you don't agree with any one of those potential, this is the fish doesn't know what water is.
Right, but there's inconsistencies within that.
Yeah, but those are the broad categories.
Sure.
So to say that we're a Judeo-Christian country we're a Western country. Like, there's going to be very broad strokes of Judeo-Christianism in it.
Should we be a Christian country?
So, well, I think we should, but I think that's a different conversation.
But
there was another point I was going to make. So the other thing is, because you said there's a thing of separation of church and state, right? Mm-hmm. So that is, I always have to quibble with the assumptions under that, because Thomas Jefferson wrote that in a letter. It's not law. It was just this is a general thrust. And even then, what that means is that there will be no official religion. So it doesn't mean that church and state are separate. It means that there is no church that is the state.
Okay.
So, like, you still have to, like, anytime you bring something in, even if you're a stark atheist or agnostic, you're still bringing your, air quotes, church into the public sphere.
Okay.
So, but the point was there will never
into
be...
the public sphere?
Mm-hmm.
So, how
your value system is always going to be determined by what your beliefs are.
For sure, but I guess my thing is, it's the, should we be a Christian identifying, if that was part of it, because there's a lot of individualism that would run counter to that. So
I don't think so, but that's
there's
Christianity is both individual and communal at the same time.
But there's other that is not unique to Christian. That there's other so that's just religion and community in a lot of ways, republic in a lot of ways. So I feel like maybe if because I do think that how the right avatar sees it, what it sounds like is how it sees is that it's a reestablishing, that rollback is a reestablishing of those
founding principles. Because you have to remember, so what you're saying, and I think where there's a misconception here on what the right believes, is you're saying we want to go back to being a Christian nation.
No, it's one of the things. It's
to being a Christian-oriented nation. Is that a better way of saying it? You said power grabs, and you said I'm trying to remember. Sorry, by basically like bureaucrats. It seemed like that was your concern, and a lot of the things I was trying to get down to like particular issues, because a lot of them seem to be, I think, a lot of liberty things. We are much better to women today than we were 60 years ago. But do you think so? In that example, do you think that is a non-Christian value, or do you think that is a... because if you go back and look at the history of male-female relationships, right?
Yeah.
Most of the progressive stuff where women got started getting treated better started in Judeo law, moved into Christian law. In fact, like a lot of the verses that we think are barbaric today, like most of the people who heard them were like, "Why are you being so mean to the men?"
Totally.
And so it was a like both of those things have always moved people towards equalization.
Sure, and there is words and practice, and Buddhism was the first one to have to allow female clergy, and they were also the first ones to rape them. You know what I mean? So it's not just I think maybe this will be a segue to my. It's about that moving forward. You said it perfectly earlier. I think that my side sees this election as a we need to go from. I forget exactly how you put it. I'm trying to remember, but like we need to get good at leading. We need to get good at what I mean, looking forward and instead of trying to the focus backwards. I think that that next 100 years, next 150 years, if we want to make it to that 500 years of hegemony, that if we want to make that, I think we're better served if we look forward, and I think a lot of the stuff that Trump on its face, like it's something about the coal industry today. He's like, we're friggin' we're gonna bring coal back. I want to help those people. From my family's from Kentucky. We're from that area. I want to see those people do awesome, and I don't think that's the way to do it.
Oh yeah, no, we should be going nuclear and hydroelectric as much as
so
possible.
So this is what I'm saying. Like how because this is why this is great, because there is so much overlap in what we're talking about. There is progress to be made that we see as possible.
Yeah.
And
so maybe this is a good a way to think about where our differences are. So if we will make the hill of progress, right? That's a little too shallow for really my purposes, but that's okay, right? So there's a hill of progress and there's a zenith here, right?
Yes.
And this zenith is, all right, we've gotten everything we actually need to be the best society and culture everywhere, right? So if we're
that's where we're at now.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
So if we're here, right, going forward means that we are going down in any direction.
Right.
So if we were here at any point as an American society, we don't actually want to leave this spot because we've reached the zenith. So then what we need to do to progress is we need to stay there and we need to build up. Right? So now I'm making a little tower because that's how I do things. And so I think where maybe part of our problem is that the right says, "Hey, we were at the zenith. Like we know where we need to be at the zenith." Let me finish. But we don't not everybody's here, so we need to start making more. Like we have our nice little house on the hill. I'm going to redraw this and make a house because that's how I function as a human being. We've got this nice little house here, but not everybody.
We are going to put this up.
Are we?
We should. Okay. I mean, it's illustrative, literally.
So we have this nice little house, and we don't really want to move this house. But what we do want to do is we want to start adding a second story onto the house so that more people can be in the house. Now the problem is, and I think this is where I think everyone would agree. Everyone in America would agree with this. I think the problem that we're now starting to have is that some people think that the right sees the left doing is not building up a second story. They're saying, hey, we're not actually at the zenith here. The zenith is over here. And the right's like, but no, that's worse for us as a civilization. That's not the zenith. That's not bringing people up. Like, we're here. Stop moving. Like,
right.
Let's move up. Let's get better. And so, I don't know if that.
No, it's super illustrated.
Yeah.
The thing, because I have seen this before. I think you
Have
might
you?
have shown it, but I saw it in college.
Okay. I thought I came. It's parallel development, I think, is the legal term, where it's like two people can come up with pretty much the same idea at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And so they both
China believes they invented pizza.
Fuck them.
but they may have. I mean, time-wise, I don't know. Who cares? It's
they have a lot more pasta, like large pasta dishes in Italy than they do in.
They have a lot of noodle dishes in China. I mean,
noodles. If they had a bunch of like bread, like dishes,
right.
I would have believed them. Like if it was like, okay, India, I could see India having invented pizza. Like they have a lot of naan, Thai food, like
naan
or what is the place? Ethiopians. I could see Ethiopians do it because like their little bread. They're not little. They're huge bread dishes. I can see that happening. Yes, Finn. I've realized this is a tangent rant.
We've been really good.
We have. Been good.
I mean, cheers to you.
Us.
Really.
Thank you.
I mean, really, that's pretty good. So
fuck China.
the same thing that I mean, even if we got behind fuck China, it's not my favorite, but I would be good with it. You know what I mean?
Like that one's okay.
The function is time, and that is why this is a little. I think the hope is. Like, you're going to have these peaks and valleys. You're cycling.
Yeah.
So you're cycling, but you hope that the cycling goes up.
I think the better way to do it is do a corkscrew. Because you're still going down, but...
But that's a corkscrew over time.
Yeah.
Is that. And that so you have to think about it, I think, is you have to include time in there. And there...
Which I guess I feel like this example does do that. Because like if you look like the conservative, and this is the Shapiro book, talks a lot of this issue.
I haven't read it yet.
But it does talk a lot about this issue. How it was like we had these core American tenets that we didn't live up to, but over time we got better and better about doing them. We let more and more people into the American dream. And, there were people who were clearly oppressed who still, like, volunteered for World Wars I and II. Because they're like, hey, no, this country's great. It's not living up to it, but this country's great. And as we went on, we got better about it. Even look at, look at the gay and lesbian community, right? There was a lot of, like, in the wars that were, the culture wars that were and maybe still to some extent are, like, that process, there were a lot of Christians who were like, no, we can't do this as a society. And I think we got to the point, at least with my generations of Christians, where we're like, well, okay, if we're going to be America, we have to do this. Like, we have to let people who have these inclinations be what they want to be. Like, whatever. At the end of the day, it's not hurting me. As long as it doesn't cross the door of our church, like, without then stepping into, like, well, this is what we believe, and you have to deal with it, but you don't have to be a part of our church.
So you can still be a countryman.
You can still be a countryman even if you aren't a Christian brother. Or if you are a Christian brother, you can still have these proclivities, but acting on them would be against, like, what we believe as a church group.
Okay, now tie that back into
this. So we now
in 51 seconds.
In 51 seconds. So we've progressed as a country to the point where it's like, no, this is completely illegal, to, okay, I may not like this, but I can't disallow it, legally speaking, because that would be against.
Why can't we do that with abortion?
Because abortion is...
To open up the biggest can of worms every 30 seconds.
Because abortion, at the end of the day, comes down to who has more rights, who has the more moral claim. The lady whose liberty is at stake, or the child whose life is at stake.
When John McCain was asked about it, he said he would let his daughter have the abortion. Like whenever you personalize it that all goes away. He was the nominee of the party.
Yeah, but I mean, so that doesn't mean. That doesn't
I'm
mean
not crazy
that,
for considering him.
Well, I mean,
on
Trump.
that side.
Trump was also the nominee of the party. Like,
yeah, He was.
Yeah, like, and part of the reason Trump was the nominee of the party is because he just took second or third so many times. Like, or rather, he took second so many times because a lot of people were like either very heavily Cruz or very heavily Rubio.
Rubio, yeah.
And so basically, everyone who hated Rubio voted for Cruz, and then the people who were like, kind of like Trump voted for Trump, and then like the other one, and then Rubio got nothing, and then you just do that around states all the time.
Yeah. No, I get it. It becomes the decathlon winner.
Yeah.
I follow. So I just want to give you an opportunity to. I really pose it as a question. I don't even know if there is an answer, but it's a.
So here's I think maybe
I'm trying not to talk with my hands. I've been getting notes on it, so I apologize.
Here's I think where the rub is with conservatism. Like I think before birth control, I think this was a slightly different discussion. No, I don't think it's hard. I don't think it was, but it would at least be different issues. With the advent of birth control, there is to a certain extent the fact that women have a choice whether they get pregnant or not, to a degree in certain things. So if there's a choice between you had the opportunity to potentially create this life or not, and you chose to take the risk, like you've now made the decision you need to sleep with the bed because you now have another person involved. You now have another genetically different human being who is involved in this situation. And that genetically different human being has rights.
And that is why we can't... Like other countries don't feel the way that we do. They have Christian churches and Christian values, and they...
Some of them, yeah.
So, to me, it was the whole abortion thing in the political, from the political side of things, a lot of the time in this country, it was seen as dirty to be involved in politics, particularly if you were a church-going person, particularly if you're a Christian. This was one of a menu of issues that they brought up to try and, rally, get the Christian part of the country, which was the majority of the country, and I believe is still the majority of the country.
It's still technically the majority.
Technically the majority of the country, to get them out and voting them in one particular way. And this one issue, it was one that was brought up, and this is the one that just lit the fire. And so, because I am aware that it was one of these things that it could have been anything. It wasn't something that they particularly felt terribly deeply about. And it is such a divisive issue, and I think I just think making it as much of an issue as we have is a net minus to the fabric of our country. It has been used to win elections, not to help people, not to put forth liberty, not to and even if I genuinely I don't want that, you know what I mean? But if it's gonna tear at the fabric of our country, and we can just say it's between her and her doctor, I don't need, how do I know what's going on with everybody?
So let me before you go too far, let me stop, because I'm curious. So let's go back. We're in 1850.
Okay.
The abortion of the day is slavery. That's the argument you would be making for slavery.
That would be the argument I'd be making for slavery. The abortion of the day is slavery.
Is slavery. The big moral issue of the day was slavery. Should we not have it? So the argument that you're making is we have to do whatever we have to not tear at the fabric of the country. That was the argument for keeping slavery despite the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
So... Oh, well, so I don't think abortion is a tiny issue compared to slavery. I think it's
the same, but the issues are the same.
What you're
it's
talking a value
about,
system thing.
But
it's a weight thing.
The argument you're making is that not tearing the country apart is bigger than the issue of the day.
Let me clarify.
Okay.
The tearing the country apart is not tearing the country apart is a much bigger issue than abortion. It is slavery is you should go to the mat over slavery.
Okay, but so that's worth tearing the country apart.
Tearing at the fabric was the words I was using.
Sorry, tearing at the fabric of the country.
Yeah. I think those, I don't see those as moral equivalents, slavery and abortion.
Okay, but I'm just saying. What I'm saying is, I mean, I guess I can't convince you that those two are moral equivalents. I would very strenuously argue that they are of a similar ilk. And when it comes to particularly political questions of the day, what is worth fighting tooth and nail over? In 1950, it was slavery. The abolitionists were literally killing and getting killed over this in Kansas, because that was the moral issue of the day.
Yeah.
I would still posit that abortion is the moral issue of our day. Maybe not as much right now.
No, it's the most divisive. It's the most divisive.
I think it's currently underneath it's sunk its head a little bit for other things.
Yeah.
But definitely in
more recently,
the 90s and aughts, that was the big moral issue,
without question.
And so I'm concerned to a certain extent, or maybe not concerned, but what I hear you the arguments I hear you making are the same arguments that people who wanted to maintain slavery are making. Take that, do with that as you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's not on the same, like you're talking like top, rape used in war, like slavery, like things that we still see going on in the world, human trafficking, stuff like that. Like those are real big issues. Mm-hmm. For me, abortion is a value system thing.
But is it still not the ending of a human life?
I don't think it is.
What's your justification?
I don't think it still needs the mom.
If we found a clump of cells like that on Mars, would that not be considered life?
Is it inside the mom?
I mean, what is
and even if
is a person who is.
I'll take it a step further,
okay.
and then they'll strengthen your argument. Even if it was, I think that it still should be between the woman and her doctor, and I don't think 535 people in Washington D.C. should have anything to do with it.
So the Spartans were right to kill their children?
I mean, their civilization was stronger. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. That's not serious. But the no, it's not. They don't. I don't see those as similar. It's this woman. This woman doesn't want it. It's in her body.
But it's separate from. It may be in her body, but it's separate from her. It is a genetically different life. So I guess my. But I mean, let's forward the timeline. No, because I feel like I want to hear your reasoning behind things.
Yeah.
So is it just because of geography, or is it because it is being cared for by somebody else? Because if it's the latter, then
it is cared for by somebody else.
If the fetus, like the genetic material that is a human being inside of another human being, is it geography, or is it because it's being cared for by by the mother?
So, you're calling her body geography?
Well, because it matters.
Sorry,
if it was a clump, would it matter? Like, if it was a clump of cells in a test tube, right? Then it's a site. Like, is that a human life then? Because it's not in the. Is that different than if it's not in her body? That's not really my point. It's just more of I want to distinguish what we're talking about here, because if you're making the argument that it is not the same, it's just a basically developing organ in her body, to say it a different way, then she has the right over it. So if it is a thing that has to be cared for, therefore it is the property of the person who's caring for it, then does that go for invalids or very old people as well?
I think her and her doctor are in the best position to have all these conversations and to discuss it, and to come up with what it is for her.
But the morality of it
isn't.
The morality has nothing to do with what her doctor and she decide. That's a health issue. Like, what is? I guess I see it as a health. It doesn't come to the threshold of moral issue for me. Mm-hmm. It is down on the
part of the
and I'm
my
asking,
value system
I'm asking
is the health
why
issue.
why is it not at that level? Because you're making decisions, like, in order for it not to be there, I think you have to make certain assumptions and decisions to say, okay, this is why this is not murder, basically, because that's what you're saying.
I think that there is enough information for the mother and the doctor to make a very tough decision, on an individual level, and whatever it is, I mean, I'm fine with whatever that decision is.
No. I'm not asking the results of the decision. What is the question that's being asked?
What to do
between
with
the doctor and the mom?
What's going on with what they're going to do with the kid or with the thing?
Mm-hmm. And so there's no outside morality that plays into that.
If there is, I think that the 535 people have nothing to do with that.
Okay.
That I think it is. I think it is fully with her, like, so morality, individual or group, ethics, universal. I don't think it's an ethical thing. I think and I'm sure you disagree with me on that.
Very much.
Yes.
But we're getting off the topic, which is why I'm attempting to not de-escalate, but steer us back.
Back to yeah. No, totally. And I wanted to ask my fun question, but that's fine.
No, let's ask your fun question.
It's
let's do it. Let's do it. And
very similar.
If I say no, I hate that, we don't have time for it, fuck you, then that's where we go.
What would it take for each of us? What would it take for me to vote for Trump, and what would it take for you to vote for Biden?
Interesting. Okay.
Because like I want to.
Are we talking politically, or like are we talking like just straight up politically? Or are we talking about best possible worlds scenario?
Oh, that's an interesting way to think.
Because best possible scenario world, I can do real easy. He makes an incredible mental and physical recovery, and he's the Joe Biden of, say, 5 years ago.
I'd want him better, but yeah, go ahead.
So, 10 years ago, we get still a good political figure, Joe Biden.
Okay.
He dumps Kamala Harris for Tulsi Gabbard. Still pretty kind of lefty, but I at least think she's going to respect people enough to not be. She doesn't seem like she's just wildly overly ambitious.
Yeah.
And she still checks like a lot of the boxes people want to see.
Yeah. She's like, military, which I think is pretty rad.
Military.
She's not my favorite, but I respect her.
I was like, okay, Democrats that I respect. I dump it for Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, hell, Chuck Schumer. Like, still would probably knife him in the back, but at least Chuck Schumer is like a creature that like I can understand. And I'm not as scared of, because he's going to play the politics instead of just grab power. He'll still try to grab power, but he won't try to grab it in like as bold ways.
Interesting.
As like, say, Kamala Harris, I would believe. So if that all happens, and then Trump basically, what would he have to do for me not to vote for him? Act like a Democrat.
This is such a good time to bring out the book.
Yeah. So then what?
Bring out your book.
Oh, bring out my present. The reasons to vote Democrat. Yeah.
Do you guys want to see the reasons?
I'll just plug it. Go to Amazon. It is Michael Knowles' Reasons to Vote Democrat. It is the most thorough and well-reasoned book on why to vote for Democrats. The appendix is absolutely stupendous.
Yeah, I own. I think I technically own that book.
You do own that book. I have a nicer copy I could give you if you want to trade it out.
I'm good.
Okay. I expect it to be dog-eared and highlighted.
I'm gonna look at the appendix for sure. That was.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's all possible worlds. In real life,
we've gone over.
Yeah.
So we could just end. I love that. Like, all possible worlds. This is what it would take.
Yeah.
Trump would have to act like a Democrat.
Yeah, but I just I want to.
He joins the squad. He's.
No. Let's impeach the bastard.
2 times.
Twice.
That's got to be right.
Let's impeach him, vote for him again, and then impeach him immediately, just to really just rub it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to end on that, I mean, that's
that's
pretty.
great.
I'll admit that's entertaining. But now I'm gonna have to actually think about like what would it take for Trump to like in real world.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. So I'm sorry to keep going on this. Like, here's the thing. Like, I think most conservatives, like half of the Republican Party, like the hold your nose and vote for Trump because he's not Hillary crowd, were very concerned that he was basically just going to govern like a Democrat. And honestly, I think he would have if it weren't for the fact that Schumer and Pelosi came at him immediately. Like, if they would have been nice and chummy to Trump, he would have just been doing whatever the hell they wanted. Because he doesn't like McConnell. He didn't like McConnell back then. Don't think he necessarily cares for him now. No, McConnell's been nice to him, so he likes McConnell now.
But I think the seeds of no go. The salt was poured in the land.
Yeah.
With a Democrat Trump thing in the election. Like during the campaign.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was even.
Well, yeah, because they wanted. Yeah, they thought they were going to win.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
yeah.
But
I'm just saying, it's like
I definitely thought
if I was, very cynical, like power politics and like don't give a rat's ass Andrew, I would have just been chummy with Trump and have been like, when people are like, why are you being chummy with Trump? It's like, do you want to get our agenda done?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that would have happened, but I absolutely love what it would take. I think that's it. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to think about it. That's a great way to end it. Maybe next time I'll share mine.
Okay.
But
in 2 weeks after.
Yes. Do you want to share?
Oh well, I mean, I think I've mentioned my fiance. So this Saturday I will be getting married to the lovely love of my life, Laura.
Amazing. Great folks, great couple,
great girl.
Just
love her.
Couldn't be happier for you, and congratulations,
Thank you.
Man.
Thank you.
I couldn't be happier.
I am very much looking forward to wedded life.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to being a boring couple people.
Boring couple people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've gotten out all your video games. Hanging out in the boxers and all that.
Well, yeah, it will be nice to walk around my apartment naked at some point. We're still at the point where it's like, all right, we're not like, we need to wait until we're officially married before we like do a lot of like just general couple stuff. So it's like, being able to walk around my apartment naked will be very nice. Not the only pro, but
So we will be taking a week or two sessions off between recordings, which doesn't mean much to you, but I want to share.
Hey, we're gonna act like we're a real show. Damn
this is a friendly argument milestone, exactly. So I wanted to share. Yeah. So we had a political discussion.
We were friends before. I think we're friends during.
Friends after. Cheers.
I think that one went well.